I'm continuing my discussion of the opening books. I'm now at book 3 of Homer's Iliad. And by the way, Debbie's just reminding me that, hey, you should tell people that if they want to see the story of the Iliad in movie form, there is the film called Troy with Brad Pitt. Now, I've got to say that in general, these kinds of films are normally pretty bad. They do great injustice to the books on which they're based. But Troy as a movie is actually very good. Brad Pitt, somewhat to my surprise, turns out to be a very good Achilles. He's able to convey not only that strength, which I would expect, but that sense of tragic inevitability, which is very powerful in that movie. And there are great battle scenes, very worthy of Homer. Homer's battle scenes are unbelievably vivid and bloody and realistic. I'll talk a little bit about how Homer treats battle a little bit later. But Troy is a movie well worth seeing. It's kind of a really good introduction. It hardly exhausts the Iliad, and the language and beauty of the Iliad can't be captured in a movie. But it's a good kind of entry point to the Iliad. Well, we're now going to go into a couple of books in which Homer is now going to introduce us to one side of the battle. Interestingly, not the Greek side, although we started off with the battle, the kind of argument between Achilles and Agamemnon, but now we're going to go look at the Trojans. And interestingly, we're going to start not by looking at Trojan fighters, they will appear soon enough, but a group of non-combatant Trojans. We are taken to the Trojan wall, and what we see there are a group of Trojan elders, old men who have fought in battles before, but are now too old to fight. And they're commenting on the battle, and they're actually commenting on, this is the first time we get a look at Helen of Troy. And she's actually Helen of Greece. She's not Helen of Troy, but we call her Helen of Troy because for the duration of the war, she is, in a sense, a Trojan. She's been abducted by Paris, and she is now in the possession of the Trojan camp. So these old men are commenting on Helen. And then we see the old King Priam. This is the king of Troy. It's his country. He's responsible for all this. He's the one who's seeing his own people subject to all this Greek destruction. And we will see remarkably Homer's treatment of Priam, which is extremely sympathetic. Priam is one of the more beloved characters in the Iliad. And so we're beginning to see the way that Homer treats the Trojans, not as a kind of barbarian, the Greeks had this idea, they got it, that barbarians can't even speak. They don't even speak any kind of proper language. The name barbarian itself comes out of this idea that you have these kind of savage people and all they can say is like bar, 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 bar. It sounds like an animal. So that's where the word barbarian comes from. But if you expect in this very early epic that the Greeks are going to treat their enemies in this story as barbarians, nothing could be further from the case. We will see that Priam interacts with Helen with extreme gentleness and humanity. And then we will meet the greatest of the Trojans, a character so liked and beloved that many people consider him to be the true hero of the Iliad, even though he is killed by Achilles at the end. And this is the great Trojan warrior, Hector. But we see him not just as a warrior, but we see him as a family man, and we see him as a father. We see him as a husband. We see him as a son. And Hector's interactions with others show the true human greatness of the man. I say human greatness because when you're dealing with Achilles, you're dealing with someone who, yes, is human, Achilles, but Achilles is also something more than human. And I have to say he's also something less than human. There's an aspect of Achilles that is machine-like, robotic, almost barbarian. And then there's an aspect of Achilles that is superhuman. His fighting strength and prowess is, these days we would say, superhero-like. He has the ability to do things that other men can't do. And in part, this may be because he is an oddity, which is to say he is the offspring of a god and a human being. His mother is a god, Thetis. His father is a normal human being, a guy named Peleus. And so contrasting Achilles and Hector, Achilles as a fighter turns out to be the greater, But in terms of a human being, there's really no contest.